Hello students, welcome to the video tutorial on diction and imagery and how to analyze those things. If you take a look at the agenda, I'm going to define the terms first, then we'll see the terms being used in action, and then I'm going to demonstrate how to analyze those terms or their use, right? Moving beyond simply noting their presence in a passage to talking about how they work within a passage or how they help to bolster or further the author's intended message in a passage. Okay, so as you're watching this, if you'd like, you can take notes on any of this. The slides will also be made available to you. So first, what is diction, right? The dictionary's definition is, diction is the purposeful selection of words and phrases to have a desired effect on readers. A translation, or another way of putting it, right, is diction is when you pick a word or phrase on purpose because you want your reader to react a certain way, okay? Or either you or the author picks words and phrases because they want the reader to react a certain way. So a quick example of diction, right? Imagine this, right? A man walks into a store. He walks up to two salespeople and says, "Hello, could you help me look for something?" The two salespeople both answer at the same time, right? Salesperson one says, "I guess, what are you looking for?" Salesperson two, again, at the exact same time says, "Sure, what are you looking for?" Which salesperson sounds rude? If you take a look at it, right, the only real difference between these two, right, what are you looking for is the same for both salespeople. But this first person, right, said, "I guess," versus this other person who said, "Sure." It seems like a really small distinction, but that's exactly how diction works, right? One change in a word or a change in a phrase can be the difference between coming across as rude, like the first person does, right, or coming across as being helpful, like the second salesperson does. So how diction works, right? First, all words have two definitions. There's the denotation, which is the definition found in a dictionary. And then there's the connotation, which is the personal definition of a word and how it makes us feel, right? And by personal, I mean, one, it's individual, but it's also kind of like how does our society or how does our culture kind of view that word? There are three distinctions or tones for words, right? There's positive. So for example, Brad skipped happily through the colorful fallen leaves, right? The underlined words usually make people feel positively. Then there's negative words, right? Brad trudged miserably through the dead fallen leaves, right? The underlined words there usually would make people feel negatively or that something is bad or wrong. Then there's neutral words, right? Brad walked through the leaves, right? The underlined word doesn't usually make people feel positively or negatively. It's just stating the facts of what is happening, right? So if you take a look at these two posters, right, they're exactly the same except in their diction, right? So which poster's diction would likely upset someone, right, or has like a negative connotation? If you look on the left, right, "Don't spread germs, destroy all bacteria when you sneeze," and the kid doing like the dab, right? The one on the right, "You need to fight germs, don't act badly when you sneeze," in the exact same image, right, of the dab. The acronym is the same, right? DAB, don't act badly, versus destroy all bacteria, right? Don't spread germs versus you need to fight germs. If you take a look at these two, right, the one on the right has more of a negative connotation, right? And the one on the right is guilting you, making you feel like you're the problem, right? Whereas the one on the left seems a little more cooperative. Don't spread germs, destroy all bacteria when you sneeze. The enemy is the bacteria, right, going into the crook of your arm. But in the other one, the one on the right, you need to fight germs, don't act badly when you sneeze. It sounds like you're being attacked, right? So all that's changed is the diction, but it makes a huge difference in how the poster is received by the person who's reading it. So analyzing diction, right? This is how you move beyond just describing what you see, okay? You want to discuss what is and is not used. So step one is to first just discuss the general tone. So in that sample that I gave before, right, Brad skipped happily through the colorful fallen leaves. Words like skipped, happily, and colorful usually make people feel positively. General description of the tone. That's step one. Step two is to then discuss the specific words, like one by one, right? So the word skipped is positive because we usually associate it with kids having fun. Happy is a positive emotion that we all want to feel. And then colorful, people tend to like colorful things rather than things that are not colorful or things that are devoid of color. Okay, so that's step two, is to kind of unpack the individual words that are important in the sentence. Then step three is ask the question, what if? What if the author used a different word instead of one of those words that you just analyzed? So what if the author had used the word blank, you fill in this blank yourself, right? Instead of the word skipped. If I use the word walked, right? The word walked does not work as well as skipped because the act of walking isn't as closely associated with being happy, right? When you think of walking, some people might like walking and other people might dislike walking, right? But if I use the word skipped in the story that I'm telling you, you instantly know that that's supposed to be a positive thing that the character is doing. Nobody skips angry, right? Nobody gets angry and skips down the street. So again, unpack the words and talk about what words are not used and how that also kind of helps you understand and unpack the text itself. So if you take a look at these posters again, right? Poster A and poster B. Sorry, let me move this down. For the first question, what is the general tone of poster A and what words reflect that tone? Right, the general tone of this one is cooperative and a little bit on the neutral side, right? The enemy is not you. The enemy is the bacteria in some ways. If you wanted to say it's negative, you can, right? Because the germs are the ones being kind of attacked here, but it's strange, right? It's negative in a positive way, right? Like you're being negative about germs, which will be positive for everybody else. If you look at the general tone of poster B, right, it's completely negative. We talked about that before, right? The you need to fight germs. Don't act badly when you sneeze, right? Everything seems, all the words are kind of designed to make it feel like you're being pointed at when you read these, right? Like you're the problem, right? That's probably not what they would have wanted. Then the second step, right, or the next question is, what if the word destroy in poster A, right? What if this word was replaced with the word delete? Would the poster be as good? Why or why not? Don't spread germs. Delete all bacteria when you sneeze. Sounds weird, right? Like we don't use the word delete when we're thinking about getting rid of germs. We think of the word delete when we're typing something on the computer and we're getting rid of a sentence or deleting a file. So just like we talked about before, right? The word delete has a specific connotation. We only use it in certain places or in certain parts of our lives. So it would actually kind of make poster A less effective if I switched out that word, even though destroy and delete are very similar in their denotation, right? They both mean to get rid of something. And then what would happen if you replace the phrase you need to fight germs with we all need to fight germs? Would the poster be better or worse? Why and how? So if this said, we all need to fight germs, don't act badly when you sneeze, that's still a little bit accusatory, right? It still feels like you're the one being attacked, but at least it's more of a group effort. The pressure is on everybody to kind of work together to make sure that, you're not spreading germs when you sneeze. I wouldn't say it's a 100% fix, but it's at least something different, right? And not quite as negative. All right. So this is not analysis, right? If you write, the poster shows a boy dabbing away germs to stay healthy. The poster uses diction to make its point. That's not analysis. All that is just telling me what is happening in the poster, right? That's a summary. This is analysis. The poster shows a boy dabbing away germs to stay healthy. The poster uses diction that is largely negative to make its point, which may upset or alienate some people. The phrases "you need to fight germs" and "when you sneeze" come across as accusatory, like the viewer is a bad person. This is reinforced by the phrase "don't act badly." No one wants to feel like they are the bad person, but that is exactly how the words in this poster are making viewers feel. If the phrase "you need to fight germs" was replaced with "we all need to fight germs," the poster would not come across as negatively. In general, this poster would likely alienate more people than it would persuade them. Obviously, when you do a proper analysis, there's a lot more that you have to say about the actual use of the device. This is your goal. You do not have to do this for every single word that you think is important in a passage, right? That would take way too much time. But you should be able to focus on specific words that are very important and unpack them this way, right, to really hammer home the point you're trying to make in your thesis. So that's diction. Let's talk about imagery, right? So the definition of imagery is the stimulation of the five senses in writing for the purpose of describing scenes and influencing readers' emotions. Most people know this part, right? For the purpose of describing scenes, but a lot of people forget or neglect this part, right? It's also about influencing somebody's emotions when you show them this picture mentally. So in other words, imagery is when you describe how something looks, sounds, smells, tastes, or feels to help readers visualize a scene and to make them feel a certain way. When you're talking about those specific types of imagery, right? When you talk about how something looks, it's called visual imagery. Talk about how something sounds, it's auditory imagery. And then I gotta move my face. When you talk about how something feels, like against your skin, right? That's called tactile imagery. Typically, when we talk about how something smells or how something tastes, we just kind of describe it as such, right? It smelled like this or it tasted like that. So a quick example of imagery. A man walks into a small shop squeezed between two larger, more modern stores. As he opens the door, a light smell of moldy wood hits his nose. The air outside was damp, but the small space heater by the shop's front door quickly warms the man's exposed hands and face. As he walks toward a salesperson, the sounds of smooth instrumental music is heard from somewhere in the back of the store. Which senses are being stimulated here? I think I can move this here. There we go. Sorry. In that question, right? You should be able to kind of pick these out, and I'm going to go over those more specifically in a minute, right? But, the small shop squeezed between two larger, more modern stores, we're getting a vision, right? A picture of small store in the middle, two big stores on the side. Light smell of moldy wood, sense of smell. The air outside was damp, right? You feel dampness on your skin, and then the man's hands and face get warmed, right? So that's tactile or touch. And then the sounds, obviously, of smooth instrumental music is sound or auditory imagery. So how imagery works, right? All images make us feel, right? It's almost exactly like diction, okay? There's three ways to feel. Positive, like in this example again, right? Brad skipped happily through the colorful fallen leaves, right? The visual imagery of Brad, picturing Brad with a smile on his face and skipping usually would make people feel positively. There's negative, which Brad looked down at his soggy shoes. The wet leaves soaked through his socks, making his feet cold and wet. Right? The tactile image of cold and wet feet usually makes people feel negatively, right? That's a sensation that we don't enjoy, we don't seek out. And then there's neutral, right? Brad could smell fish cooking. There isn't much there, right? Because it's all just facts. There's a little tricky though. That's why there's a little asterisk, right? This could go either way depending on your preferences, right? In this case, if the narrator told us beforehand that Brad likes fish, then this is a pleasant smell imagery. But if the narrator had told us previously that Brad didn't like the smell of fish, or like didn't like fish at all, then this would be a negative. It kind of depends on what the narrator gives us for cues. Okay. So when we look at this example again, you want to ask yourself, how might this make you feel, right? How might all four of these examples make somebody feel as they read them, right? And then what is the author effectively trying to convey to you, the reader? Well, first, the small shop squeezed between two larger, more modern stores is probably designed to make you feel claustrophobic, which is a negative emotion. The light smell of moldy wood is usually negative, right? Mold is usually associated with negative stuff. But the fact that it says light may indicate that it isn't too bad of a smell, like slightly unpleasant versus like, awful, smelling something really, really disgusting. The air outside being damp, but then him being able to warm his face and hands as he comes into the store, right? That's designed to make someone feel comfortable, right? You go from an unpleasant feeling to a pleasant feeling, which is a positive emotional reaction. And then the sounds of smooth instrumental music from the back of the store is, again, usually positive. Even if you don't like instrumental music, it usually has some kind of a calming effect on you, right? And the word smooth also kind of reinforces that idea, like that emotion. Right? So what happens, interestingly, right? What happens to the imagery from the start of the passage to the end of the passage? I've got negative, slightly negative, positive, and then positive. So as you read further, right, the imagery changes from all negative to it's getting better, and then everything is positive. Okay. So similar to with diction, right, you need to discuss what is and is not there. And there are certain steps that you should take. Step 1 is identify the type of imagery, right? Brad skipped happily through the colorful fallen leaves. The description of Brad smiling and skipping through the leaves is sight imagery, right? Which of the five which of the five senses is being stimulated? Step 2 is to discuss the emotions that are usually attached to that use of imagery, right? The sight imagery, or that picture of Brad with a smile on his face and skipping, usually makes people feel positively because smiling and skipping are happy images. And then step 3, look for patterns. Ask yourself questions like, does the image repeat itself? And if so, why did it do that? Like, what was the effect of having that image repeated? Or, like we just saw in the previous example, has the imagery shifted somehow, right, from bad to good, or from good to bad, or from better to worse, from etc. And then why, right? For what purpose? What does that seem to help the author do? So the most important thing I have for you about imagery is this warning, okay? Many students write things like, this is imagery because I can imagine what it looks like. You saw me roll my eyes, right? That's not analysis, right? You need to remember to follow the steps, right? Identify the type of imagery first, discuss how that description of the imagery is supposed to make somebody feel, and then look for patterns. So this, again, is not analysis. If you just write or say, the passage uses a lot of imagery because I can picture what it sees. I can picture what he sees, like the character, right? This is important because the author wants us to have a picture of what things look like in our minds. I can't stop rolling my eyes, right? That's garbage. That's not analysis, okay? That's obvious. This is analysis. Right? The passage uses visual, smell, auditory, and tactile imagery to help the reader understand that the man goes from an unpleasant environment to a comfortable one. The author uses negative imagery by describing the shop the man goes into as squeezed between two larger buildings, making the reader feel claustrophobic. As the man enters, he encounters the light smell of moldy wood, This is usually unpleasant, but the fact that the scent is light indicates it isn't that bad. The passage then shifts to more positive imagery as it describes the pleasant tactile experience of having one's face and hands warmed by a heater after coming in from a damp day outside, and the sound of smooth music coming from the back of the store. This shift from unpleasant to pleasant imagery is designed to let the reader know that the man feels good about entering the shop. The author likely creates this shift in imagery to make the reader feel more relaxed along with the man, and to signal that entering this store marks an end to the man's otherwise unpleasant day outside. Again, just like you saw in the example I gave you for Diction, right? Proper analysis requires you to write much more than simply the obvious. Okay, this gets you nothing really, right? This will help you demonstrate that you know what it is you're talking about and that you know how to analyze a passage. All right, so that is the end of the video for diction and imagery. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out the other videos that I put together as well for details, language, and syntax. Thanks.